Hey guys, hey guy, question for you. Are you the type of person that when you make a mistake, when you do something wrong, you automatically say, you know, hey, oh man, I wish I was this way, I wish I was that way, you know, something I do a lot, you know, and I think I get this from my dad. I went golfing with him recently, and you know, we hit the ball and it wouldn't do what we wanted it to. and we go, come on, get it together, Tyler. You know, I talk to myself, you know, and he would do the same thing, you know, to himself. I was like, oh, come on, you suck. Come on, get it together. You know, and we tend to do that, and that's kind of like that's a fun example, you know, not a big deal, but a lot of times when we make mistakes in life, when we enter into sin or do something wrong, we tend to identify with that sin, and you know, we do whatever. Now, let's say we act out in anger, and then afterwards we say, I'm such an angry person. I can't believe how would I do that? God, I have no control. You know, or we say things like that to ourselves. And maybe you're in that position. But I want to bring us to a verse in Romans chapter 7. A few verses, actually. Starting in verse 1. Paul says, or do you not know, brothers, for I am speaking to those who know the law, that the law is binding on a person only as long as he lives. For a married woman is bound by law to her husband while he lives, but if her husband dies, she is released from the law of marriage. Accordingly, she will be called an adulteress if she lives with another man while her husband is alive. But if her husband dies, she is free from that law. And if she marries another man, she is not an adulteress. Likewise, my brothers, you also have died to the law through the body of Christ, so that you may belong to another, to him who has been raised from the dead, in order that we may bear fruit for God. Okay, Paul is showing us this way of thinking, this way of viewing ourselves. You know, it's he's basically saying, like, you've died. You've died, and he uses the example of a woman being married to a man. You know, like, that woman is bound to that man until the man dies, right? And similarly, we were bound to this law. We were bound to, trying to do things our own way. We were bound to making things work our own way. We were bound to this kind of sinful nature, you know, where we had no choice but to sin. Like, we not only did we want to sin, we were going to sin no matter what, right? Now Paul is saying that you are released from that because you have died with Christ. You have died with Christ, and you've been resurrected with him. You've been resurrected with him to be like him. That old person, that old nature, that old way of living has died. The old way of thinking has died, and now a new creation has come. Okay? It continues on to say, for while, in verse 5, while we were still living in the flesh, our sinful passions aroused by the law were at work in our members to bear fruit for death. But now we are released from the law, having died to that which held us captive, so that we serve in the new way of the Spirit and not in the old way of the written code. There's a new way. There's a new way of thinking. There's a new life. There's a new person. You are not that old person. When we keep going back to those old ways and thinking those old ways, self-condemnation, we're going back to that way of that dead self, right? And later on in this chapter, Paul says in verse 24, "Wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death?" That's a reference to a ancient Roman capital punishment. If a murderer is caught and they murder somebody, one of the ways they would punish them was they would strap that body, they would chain that dead body that they murdered onto the murderer, okay? And that body would begin to decay on them, and they would actually die from infection eventually. That's what he's referring to here. Like when you're going and you're thinking the old way, in those old ways, saying, "Oh, I'm not really saved. I mean, God doesn't save me from this. I still do this thing," and you start thinking those old thoughts and allowing ourselves to sink back and self-condemnation and all that. That's like you're strapping this old decayed body and saying, "Yeah, I'm gonna walk with this willingly." But Paul is saying, no, we have a greater way of living. We have a greater way of walking that has been given to us by Jesus. So I want you guys to talk, like, hey, if you're with someone, think about this, talk about this. You know, in what ways have I been going back into old mindsets? You know, sinning's one thing, you know, but really it's mindsets, because mindsets lead to behavior. But in what ways am I old mindsets like strapping on that dead body, that dead way of living? You know, in what ways am I kind of doing that? You know, and how can I take every thought captive? That's it's a huge topic. You know, in what ways can I take every thought captive so I don't sink back into those old mindsets and old ways of living? So, hope you guys enjoyed this, and see you later.